At 71, John Travolta lives in a Florida estate that is less of a home and more of a sanctuary for memories and aviation. But to understand the man who today looks at the horizon with such quiet serenity and visible scars, we must travel back to the dawn of 1990.
The floor and entertainment for his friends and anyone who happens to be at the club.
At that time, the brilliance of Grease and Saturday Night Fever was a fading echo, a yellowed photograph on Hollywood's wall. The industry had labeled him a 70s relic. He was the man time forgot. Between 1983 and 1989, Travolta navigated a sea of rejections and questionable choices. Films like Perfect and Staying Alive were shredded by critics. The industry is cruel. It loves to elevate idols, but it takes a dark pleasure in watching.
And he's really in transition in his life. It's really a movie.
Travolta was no longer the dangerous Tony Manero. He was seen as a lightweight actor in family comedies like Look Who's Talking. While the film was a massive financial success, it arguably damaged his serious artist image. He was the nice dad of a talking baby, not the leading man Hollywood feared or respected. Behind the scenes, personal grief was already weaving its web. He had lost his first love, Diana Hyland, and his mother, Helen, and he sought refuge in his family with Kelly Preston.
About a chapter in this young man's life, and he's wondering what he wants to do with the rest of his life aside.
But professionally, the phone stopped ringing. The great directors were looking for new faces: Tom Cruise, Richard Gere, Kevin Costner. Travolta was considered box office poison for dramatic roles. He watched from the isolation of his home as other actors took roles he himself had turned down due to poor advice. The feeling of obsolescence is the ghost that haunts every great artist, and for John, that ghost was real. He was in the desert. What no one knew was that in a video rental store in Manhattan Beach, a young former clerk with an encyclopedic mind and a fixation on forgotten idols was writing the script that would change cinema history. Quentin
from this once a week, going to the discotheques. So
Tarantino didn't want a star of the moment. He wanted the danger he saw in Travolta's eyes. He wanted to rescue the phoenix from the ashes. But Hollywood hated the idea. The studio wanted Daniel Day-Lewis. They wanted Bruce Willis. Anyone but the disco guy. The stage was set for the greatest all-or-nothing moment in celebrity history. If he failed here, it would be the definitive end. If he won, he would become immortal in a way Danny Zuko never could. The year was 1993, and John Travolta was about to receive the call that would redefine the meaning of cool for an entire generation. Before we move to the moment John Travolta shocked the world at Cannes, we need your help. Biographical documentaries with this level of detail require months of research. If you value stories of resilience and nostalgia, subscribe to the channel now. Our goal is to reach 50,000 subscribers this month so we can keep producing in 4K. Leave a like if you believe talent always finds a way back. And if this content adds value to your day, consider supporting our work with a super thanks. Your direct contribution keeps this independent production alive. Now, let's open the loop. How did a discredited actor convince the world he was a dangerous hitman in just 6 minutes of screen time? And what was the secret Tarantino kept behind the scenes? The year is 1994. The Cannes Film Festival breathes cinema, but no one was prepared for what they were about to see. When the lights went down and the soundtrack of Pulp Fiction exploded, John Travolta's image appeared transfigured. Long hair tied in a ponytail, an impeccable black suit, and a gaze that mixed existential boredom with latent violence. Vincent Vega was born there. Travolta wasn't just acting, he was reclaiming his territory. The dance scene with Uma Thurman at Jack Rabbit Slim's was the masterstroke. It wasn't the athletic dance of Saturday Night Fever. It was an ironic, mature, magnetic dance. He was playing with his own legend. In Cannes, the film received 6 minutes of non-stop applause. Travolta left that room not as an ex-star, but as the most coveted actor on the planet. The critics who had buried him now called him a genius. The Oscar nomination was the final validation. But the impact of Pulp Fiction went beyond awards. It changed the aesthetics of the 90s. Suddenly, everyone wanted Vincent Vega's suit and his way of speaking. John Travolta became the face of reinvention. He proved that talent has no expiration date, it just needs the right director. This victory opened the doors to a string of hits that would define the decade. He stopped being a hostage to the past to become the architect of his future. However, as he climbed the steps of glory again, the shadows of his personal past and the pressures of Scientology began to circle his throne. He was the king of Hollywood again, but at what cost? The world saw him as invincible, but in luxury hotel rooms between one interview and another, John was still the man carrying the weight of losses that no Oscar could heal. The 90s would be his most iconic phase, but also the setting where fate would prepare the hardest tests for his heart. After the whirlwind of Pulp Fiction, John entered a state of grace that few actors have ever experienced. If the 70s were about youth and the 80s about survival, the 90s were about dominance. In 1995, he took on the role of Chili Palmer in Get Shorty. It was the definitive proof that his comeback wasn't just a stroke of luck from Tarantino. Chili Palmer was the personification of charisma, a mob loan shark who decides to become a film producer. Travolta brought a relaxed elegance to the role that earned him a Golden Globe. He was playing with the very industry that had discarded him. At that time, he was earning $20 million per film. He was once again the epicenter of Hollywood. Successes followed, like Broken Arrow, where he explored his villainous side with infectious joy, and Phenomenon, which showed his ability to touch the audience's heart with a story of humanity and mystery. Travolta was everywhere. Magazine covers, billboards, talk shows. He had reached the perfect balance between cult cool and mass commercial success. In his mid-40s, he was more attractive and respected than he had been in his 20s. He had learned to use silence, the gaze, and the pause in a way only veterans can. But this golden phase also brought intense scrutiny of his private life. The press began to dig into his relationship with Scientology and question the mysteries surrounding his routine in Florida. But to the public, he was the symbol of resilience. John and Kelly Preston became the royal couple of Hollywood, appearing on red carpets with a glow that seemed unbreakable. The birth of their children, Jet and Ella Blue, seemed to complete the picture of a perfect life. He bought planes, built his own runway at home, and lived the American dream on its grandest scale. But like every Greek tragedy, the peak of the mountain is also where the wind blows hardest. The success of the 90s gave Travolta a sense of invincibility that would lead him to make one of the most controversial decisions of the turn of the century. The man who conquered Hollywood was about to test his luck against common sense. If there was one moment in the 90s that defined the madness and genius of that decade, it was 1997's Face Off. Seeing John Travolta and Nicolas Cage swap identities was a cinematic event. For Travolta, playing the villain Castor Troy trapped in the body of hero Son Archer was an exercise in duality that reflected his own life. On set, he was the consummate professional, but the pressure of maintaining superstar status was exhausting. Face Off was the technical peak of his action career. He was on top of the world, but the decade was coming to an end, and with it, the aesthetic that made him famous. It was during this period that John began to dedicate him intensely to his passion project, Battlefield Earth. He wanted to use his power in Hollywood to honor the beliefs that sustained him in difficult times. He believed his faith in Scientology was what kept him standing while his loved ones departed. But the line between personal faith and professional career began to blur. While filming successes like A Civil Action, where he delivered a restrained and brilliant performance, he was already planning the disaster that would be the turn of the century. Behind the scenes in the late 90s, John was a man divided between the desire to be a serious artist and loyalty to an organization the world viewed with suspicion. The tensions over his private life began to leak. Rumors, lawsuits, and tabloid gossip tried to pierce the bubble of his family's perfection. He reacted with the same Danny Zuko smile, but his eyes no longer shined the same way. The death of Jet was still years away, but the fragility of his son's health was a constant and secret concern. John was living the paradox of being the most visible man in the world while hiding the most vulnerable parts of his soul. He was the master of masks in Face Off, but the mask he wore to the public was starting to grow heavy. The end of the 90s would mark the end of his commercial golden age and the start of a much darker journey. We have reached the present. John Travolta, at 71, is no longer the man seeking Hollywood's approval. The 90s are left behind like an epic soundtrack of a time that won't return. What remains today is a man who survived 3 of the greatest pains a human being can endure: the loss of his first woman, the loss of his firstborn son, and recently the loss of his life partner, Kelly Preston. Looking back at his iconic 90s moments, Travolta doesn't just see box office numbers or awards. He sees the years when he was truly happy with those he loved before silence dominated the hallways of his home. He now dedicates his time to aviation and his remaining children, Ella and Benjamin. Flying has become his form of meditation, a way to